Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. A lot of happenings with this case, and of course, we're referring to the case of the homicide on 54th Street in Midtown of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And I just wanted to say a few things. There's a lot of vitriol been going, especially in the true crime community. You know, it's never a good thing when someone gets murdered. But because I think in this country, the hatred towards the healthcare field, people are actually applauding this. And I understand the way healthcare is run in this country is not fair. It's absolutely not fair. And people like myself, people like Professor Mike, and people like Phil Grimaldi, we've been taken care of. We're retired. We get health care for the rest of our life from the NYPD. And then, of course, once you get of age, you go on Medicare. So I understand, because I even see my young son, who's recently married. He pays over $1,000 a month for his wife. And that's from a company-based healthcare program. That's horrible, you know? So I understand it, but the vitriol wishing and applauding that this man who had two young boys in high school and a wife and a family and people that loved him, I just don't agree with that. And you're free to do and say as you please, but I don't think it's right. So the big story yesterday, of course, was this picture on the screen right here. They found the backpack that we've seen in so many different pictures of the perpetrator going through Midtown with this backpack. There it is on his shoulders. And, you know, people keep pointing out to me and other people that, oh, that's a different backpack. That's a different color. A lot could have to do with the lighting, the camera that took the picture. So before you jump to that conclusion, that's not the same backpack. Let's also understand that they've tracked the perpetrator from point A to point B to point C to point D. And there's a reason that they searched inside Central Park with drones and over 100 officers and were able to recover this backpack. So that is the big break in the case. However, they are on his trail. They know that he left the city the day of the shooting. And they tracked him all the way up to the Port Authority on 178th Street and Broadway in Washington Heights. That is right near the George Washington Bridge. Now, you have these leads. How many buses were leaving that Port Authority, say, within the hour? And they tracked those. That's not voluminous. It's still a lot of work. Pull the video. And all they know now is that he entered the Port Authority at that location and he never came out. So they are actually surmising that he got on a bus. There's no absolutely concrete, at least we don't know that. And to tell you the truth, I wish the NYPD would keep more things quieter, because I think they're giving out too much information to the press. That's not helpful when you get this guy. Now, you want to make sure you have the right guy. And when everything is known, everything is given to the press and the public, it makes it much more difficult, especially to interview and interrogate the person to determine whether you have the right guy. And there's other ways, comparing the evidence against the person you have. Anyway, folks, we're going to have an exciting show today. Hold on to your hats. Hold on to your wig. Hold on to your toupee. Hold on to your family members. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, Believe, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Folks, joining me this afternoon is crowd favorite, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome.
Bill, good to see you. Good afternoon.
You know, Mike, so much has happened in such a short time. And we know that we live in a world that wants instant gratification. And this case is not as simple as the press makes it out to be. And before you know it, the press is, if we don't get this guy in the next day or two, they're going to say, is this a cold case? You know, this is a complicated case because guess what? He's not identified yet. As much as people are saying, oh, Mayor Adams said they have a name. That hasn't been released. So we don't know if that is, in fact, a fact, right? Now, if they had a name, they have to compare that name to a person and see if they can get a photograph of that person that matches to what they have in the surveillance. The voluminous nature of this investigation, pulling video from hundreds and thousands of locations, is so manpower intensive that it can't even be imagined by the average citizen, because we just expect them, voila, here's the picture. But with all of that takes a lot of work, a lot of detectives going out there, viewing the video. And as the chief of detectives said, Joe Kenny, sometimes the detective will have to watch 8 hours of video to pull 8 seconds that are usable. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, the idea that they have a name, they may have a name. We don't know if it is the real name. It may be a name that was used when he checked into the hostel. It may be a fake ID. It may be a name that he used to buy the ticket back to Georgia, because we know he took a bus that the last destination was Georgia. It may be a name that he may have used, when he went to get his latte at Starbucks, like a half an hour before the shooting. We have names, but we don't know if it is the real name. If we can get the firearm, we can get a little bit closer. If there's a hit on a fingerprint, of course, that's much better. But, Mayor Adams may have really, maybe he just misspoke. Maybe he was intimating that they have several leads, including some possible names. So that's different than saying they have like what somebody would consider a definite name. So patience, is needed, because we have a lot of technical data we got to get from the phone, and that sort of thing. We ought to know where it was bought. Maybe we'll get a name and a face from a surveillance video where that phone was bought. If it was bought here in New York or someplace down in Georgia. So there may be a number of names. We're not sure which is the correct name. So just, be patient. Be patient. It's a manhunt now. And they're going to get them. It's just going to take a little bit, but they're going to get them. I would expect it won't take much longer, but they will get them.
Absolutely. So this is some video. This was the big story yesterday, sort of the breaking story.
Friday night, a big break in the murder case that's captivated the country. NYPD cops discovering the backpack they believe the killer ditched. Officers surrounding an area in Central Park behind the band shell after an all-day ground and drone search. It's unclear what, if anything, was left inside as investigators wait for a search warrant.
We're painstakingly going through every bit of evidence that we can come across.
Officials believe the man who killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson fled the murder scene through the park Wednesday morning. After reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance video from across Manhattan, detectives believe the suspect arrives in the city November 24th by Greyhound bus. He then checks into a youth hostel on the Upper West Side, wearing a mask the entire time. But it's also where they got this picture cops call the money shot.
At some point, he pulled his mask down and smiled at the clerk.
However, it wasn't enough for a match in the NYPD's facial recognition database. Investigators believe the killer cased the Hilton Hotel before he made his move Wednesday morning. A premeditated execution they believe was not linked to Thompson's personal life. He was fatally shot with what could be a type of gun used to put down animals.
It's a weapon commonly used on farms and ranches. If an animal has to get put down, the animal can be shot without causing a loud noise.
The suspect then flees on a bicycle into Central Park, exiting on the Upper West Side, ditching the bike, and hailing a cab at 86th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. That cab taking him uptown to the Washington Heights bus terminal to parts unknown.
We have reason to believe he's no longer in New York.
We have video of him entering the Port Authority bus terminal. We don't have any video of him exiting, so we believe he may have gotten on a bus.
So that's the story they have right now.
Right.
He goes into the Port Authority on 178th Street and Broadway. That's in Washington Heights.
Mhm.
And he goes in, but they don't see him come out. So not rocket science. You go in there, you find out how many buses left within the hour of him pulling up to this location, and you check out all 4 of them. Now, you don't, I think, have to present ID to buy a ticket. And he'll probably pay cash, as he has with everything else, so it's not trackable. But he could have gotten on any bus. So they don't know specifically where he went to. But there is also video inside the Port Authority. So perhaps it'll show which bus or which little station he got on, and that could determine which bus he in fact jumped on, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, people, if you're not familiar with Manhattan, that bus terminal isn't the one in Midtown. This one, like you say, it's up in Washington Heights. It's right over the side of the George Washington Bridge, the New York side of the George Washington Bridge. And so it has so much access going across the country. And same thing with the one down in Midtown. But this one, you can get across and get out of New York a lot faster. So he did that. And yeah, I just want to respond to a gentleman who had an observation, Mr. Soretti, in the chat about dry runs. Yeah, this guy got to New York, we think November 24th. All right. So he had a bunch of days to stake everything out, figure out a route to get in and out. So, yeah, I would imagine he went on a number of dry runs. I'm sure he probably, if they go back and look at tape over a previous week, they may be able to pick him out in the area, looking at that hotel, looking at the other building across the street, and just sitting there watching. There's 8 million people in New York. He would not stand out if he appeared there every day for a week at different times, 2:00 in the afternoon, 5:00 in the morning. That place at Midtown is always a little bit pretty busy, even at 3:00 in the morning. So yeah, I'm sure that how he got out of Manhattan very quickly, he had the route planned, and I'm sure he practiced that route, riding a bicycle into the park, whatever, trying to figure out, okay, how long is it going to take to do this? How long is it going to take to do that? Let me get up to the Port Authority bus terminal. I think he probably practiced that a number of times to make sure that when he actually did the shooting, he knew exactly from muscle memory where he was going. So I think that he had a lot of help in this case.
There's the picture that they call the money shot.
Yeah.
And this was the picture of him checking into the hostel on 104th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. Now, his mask was pulled up, and the person behind the counter said, "Why don't you pull your mask down so I can see your smiling face?" And he pulled the mask down for that instant. And this is the picture they got from that. However, what we've been told is that this picture is not good enough to submit to facial recognition databases in order to get a match. But if you see this picture and you know this guy, and that's what they're sort of counting on, is call 1-800-577-TIPS, TIPS. That's the hotline. And right now, I am sure that the NYPD is getting hundreds, if not thousands, of tips on this guy. And that is another reason that you need so much manpower for this, because every single tip has to be checked out and closed out. Is this tip good, or is this a wild goose chase? I mean, people are probably turning in family members, enemies, all types of things. And the police have to check out all those leads. So it is so time consuming. And I know many people don't care how investigation is done. They just want results. Don't tell me, there's a famous chief on the NYP that used to say, don't tell me what you can't do. Just tell me what you can do. You know, I won't tell you his name, but in essence, I don't want to hear negatives. I only want to hear positives. Mike.
Yeah, there's, this case now, since we know he's out of New York, it's going to involve New Jersey State Police looking for this guy. Other states, maybe if it's a bus to Georgia, you got the Georgia State Police there. This is a multi-jurisdictional case. The FBI, I'm sure, is helping out what they can with technical assistance. So therefore, it's going to take a while, and you have a lot of people from a lot of different states working on this case. So therefore, patience. Remember the Koberger case from 2022. The killings were November 13th, and he was caught 6 weeks later, like by December 30th, I think it was, and he was caught in Pennsylvania. People were saying, oh, it's too long. It's a cold case squad. Bring in the FBI. The police don't know what they're doing. Same thing here. It's going to take, a couple of weeks to get all the technical information back, all the searches, the name searches through voluminous databases. So we are involved in a manhunt. But while the manhunt is going on and you have all these multiple jurisdictions trying to coordinate with each other with the NYPD, because that's going to be the coordinating, mothership for all the information, you have all this technical data that you're trying to achieve. At this point, we don't know what is in that backpack. Hopefully there would be a firearm in that backpack. There's probably clothing, and maybe there's something with a fingerprint on it, a better fingerprint than maybe what they have already. There might be some DNA there. So, there's a lot of information that we can get from a backpack that people may not be aware of. But patience is needed here. And if it's going to take another 2 weeks, he's going to be caught. He's going to be caught eventually.
I just want to speak upon that backpack. Now, when the police recovered this, of course, the first thing they were thinking of was, is it booby trapped? Because that's something that someone like this, who obviously planned this shooting quite well, reconned the location, targeted a CEO of United Healthcare, appears to be a political statement he made based on the facts of what he wrote on the side of the shell casings. So they correctly had the bomb squad x-ray this backpack before they retrieved it. It was also, they used an excavator to pick it up and put it on something because they don't want human hands that could contaminate it, put potentially a palm print or fingerprints on it or their own DNA on it. So they lifted it up with an excavator. It will go first. Well, they already, as we said, x-rayed it by the bomb squad to determine if it was safe to transport. So I imagine it was safe, but that x-ray of the backpack would tell them if the gun was in there. So they'll know that already. In addition, they're not taking any chances. So what do, Mike? And vis-a-vis this backpack, they get a search warrant.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though it appears that it was discarded, if they find evidence that directly points to the perpetrator and they don't get a search warrant, he could challenge that once they do arrest him. And they will arrest this guy. I almost guarantee, well, I do guarantee it. Mike.
Yeah, they got to cross every I, cross every T, dot every I, because even if something's discarded and a suspect is discarding something, a firearm, a backpack, this sort of thing, leaving a crime scene, that is obviously an abandonment. An abandonment of property means that you have it's interpreted to me that you have no privacy interest in it. That was the case that went all the way up to Supreme Court back in like the early 90s, California versus Greenwood. But in this kind of case, it doesn't help. I mean, it doesn't hurt just to go get a warrant as quickly as you can. You got the backpack. He's out of the city. Take an hour, get that backpack before you start looking through it. And this way, it's one less ground for appeal, one less possible delay in the trial. When after they catch this person, it's one less thing that a defense attorney can point to and, you know, say the police violated this person's constitutional rights. So you're absolutely right. They're you know, dotting every I, crossing every T as they go. They're being very, very methodical, and that's good. You don't need cowboys at this point. You know, this is very methodical, and this is a manhunt, and they'll get them. But you got to make sure you do it by the book in this case.
Mike, let's talk about what potentially could be in this backpack and what type of forensic evidence could lead back to the perpetrator based on this backpack, which we saw throughout this investigation, based on, there you see it on his back, based on video evidence that he'd been wearing this. There he is on the bike wearing it. Here he is in another photo wearing it. So that's the connection of connecting physical evidence, forensic evidence to this perpetrator once he's caught. Now, of course, what we'll be looking for is DNA. And from what I understand, they already have a good DNA sample of this perpetrator. However, he's not in CODIS. So what does that mean? CODIS is the combined DNA index system. All right. So what that would mean is that he hasn't been arrested for a felony or certain misdemeanors. So they haven't gotten a hit in that way of the DNA that they've collected. The other thing, it's called forensic DNA. That's DNA from crime scenes that has yet to be identified. That's what this DNA is now, forensic DNA. So right now, the DNA has not been identified. However, if necessary, down the road, and maybe they've already started this, they can do what's called investigative genetic genealogy and build a family tree. And we're not going to get deeply into that. Just know that that is an option, and it takes several months, if not 6 months or 9 months to do, but they'll get it going. They'll get this going right away. Again, people have been questioning, well, why are they making such a big deal of this case? If this was John Q. Citizen, they wouldn't be doing this. You know something? I'm not going to lie. You're 100% right. They wouldn't. They wouldn't be doing this. One of the reasons this is a high-profile case is, we used to say it all the time, anything that happens below 59th Street, you're getting the maximum amount of personnel are going to work this case. Manhattan South, they're going to get the biggest attention on it. The media attention on it is going to blow it up. This is not just a national case. This is an international case. So it is getting all kinds of attention. Also, when do you see the FBI put up $50,000 on a homicide in New York City? When have you ever seen that before? I can't recall.
Yeah.
Now there's $60,000 because $10,000 was put up by the police foundation, the NYPD police. So there's $60,000. Hopefully that'll get someone the mantra, if you see something, say something. Hopefully that $60,000 will get someone talking. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, there's always going to be somebody that needs cash. And if they know this person's name, they may be a friend, but they may not be that good a friend to keep their lips closed. You never know. They may just want to have a little bit of extra spending cash for the holidays. But this person has to rely on, since that picture is pretty darn good, yeah, he has to rely on all the people who actually know him to keep their mouths shut. And, you know, that's not something you can count on, because you got to remember, there's no honesty among thieves. You can't turn your back. There may be people who may have worked with this person in the past. He may be a person who's acted on behalf of a number of other people, a small organization that detests, CEOs of healthcare industry. I compared this to the shooting of a doctor who performed abortions like 10 years ago. You get some people who feel justified to be the lightning bolt to come and exact revenge on a person, and they feel justified. This person may be part of that sort of group, a guerrilla group that may want to declare war on healthcare CEOs. So, there is some symbolism, we know, from taking those the words off those bullets, we know what the message is. It's not just a killing, it's a killing, but it's also intending to scare other people. That's where we get the term like a terrorist attack. It's not only the target being killed, but it's other like-minded people, who may be targeted next. So this is a huge deal. And I will say this, look, when I was in the 4-6, I was in the 4-6 for 12 years. I saw a lot of dedicated detectives, and they worked their ass off on their homicides. I knew guys that had 3 and 4 homicides in their folder while they're investigating robberies and burglaries and everything else. So, the NYPD does have the greatest detectives in the world because they know exactly what they're doing. This is their cup of meat. This is what they do for a living. And so, although this is high profile and this is a lot more attention, please believe me that people do, get good service here when their family members are victims of a crime. Homicide detectives do want to solve these cases because that's the challenge. That's why you want to be an NYPD detective, because you're the best in the world. And that's, the cream always rises to the top.
Mike, in the chat, someone mentioned that he was here for 10 days.
Yeah.
Right. So why do they have so few pictures that are usable, that are identifiable? Why don't they have a picture of him fully with his hood down and a mask off? Good question. Very good question. It is not for lack of trying. But the other thing is they just found this out. I think it came out early yesterday, that he got here on the 24th when they recovered video of him getting out of a bus at the Port Authority and then going to the Hilton, directly to the Hilton Hotel. And he got there at 10:11 p.m. on the 24th. So he was starting his recon right there. He was starting his practice. He was scoping out the block. He was seeing, where would my escape route be? Where could I put the bicycle I'm going to need to get away with this? How many people are going to be on the street at 06:44 in the morning? Vis-a-vis, that's why he used that silencer. And we spoke about this on this show. Sometimes the noise of shots fired can actually be an aid to you. It scares people. And what do people do when they hear shots fired? They hit the dirt. They hit the ground, chest first. So they're not going to see the shooter. But he chose to use a silencing device on his gun. And we'll play an expert examining and critiquing this firearm and what happened here. But he obviously did a great deal of planning, did a great deal of recon. And many of you are asking, how did he know, A, where Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was staying? Because he was staying in a hotel right across the street from the Hilton called the Luxor, Luxur. How did he know that? Was this publicized on the United Healthcare website, that they had this conference at the Hilton Hotel? And it would say, so-and-so is going to be there. Was that information available? Part 2 to that was part A. B, why did he not have a security detail? The man is worth $50 million, we've been told, or in that vicinity, and gets paid $10 to $11 million a year. Having that type of money and being in the position he was, a CEO of a hated healthcare company, which we're learning about right now, which also was under investigation by the federal government. There's enough enemies out there that he should have had a security detail. Mike.
Yeah, when I first heard of this the other day, that's the first 2 things that struck out at me is what is going on. How does anybody know where this person is going to be? Okay, it's one thing, he's staying at a hotel. There's going to be a CEO's meeting with all shareholders and that sort of thing, maybe trying to raise some capital for new adventures for the company. Now, that's one thing, and you may know that, but that's a big hotel. It's got entrances on all the blocks, and there's, hundreds of people going in and out all day long. If I didn't know inside information, I would just go towards the front door and park myself across the street. And if I had a picture of the guy, maybe try to pick him out of the crowd that is going in and out all day, I wouldn't know that he would be getting up from out of a building at 6:40 in the morning and going across to the big hotel where there's going to be this conference. I could only know that if somebody gave that information to me. That is really specific. That is really closely held information. You're probably not going to find that kind of itinerary that, on any sort of website. Only a few people are privy to that sort of information. That struck me as the first thing. I'm like, he's coming from one building to another, walking down a street. Yes, it's Midtown Manhattan, but it's 6:45 in the morning, and he's going from one side entrance to another side entrance. What's going on? How does a person know where that person's going to be at that particular time? He had great intelligence. We don't know where he got that from. And the second thing, and it struck me again because I'm an attorney and I'm always thinking about negligence and things like that and responsibility. I'm like, where is his bodyguard? Where is his administrative assistant? Where is his right-hand person helping him get through these meetings? If he did, and we have been told that he's had some death threats in the past from where the headquarters located in Minneapolis, I think it is. Wouldn't that company give him some sort of bodyguard service? And when he's traveling to New York, contract with the service company here and have somebody with a concealed carry permit sitting, walking right next to him, watching entrances of buildings and exits and that sort of thing, helping him out. Two huge questions that jump right out at you. We haven't heard anything about those two issues. And that is kind of weird because this has been going on now for 96 hours, and we haven't heard anything about those two issues with that company. So, that gives people the idea that this may be, quote unquote, an inside job. I'm not sure, but it begs the question, and that's something that I think everybody wants to know. Those two questions are just as important as the identity of the shooters. How did he know where to be at a specific time, in a specific date, in a specific location? Those are $2 million questions.
Mike, a part of a security team, they would have something called an advanced team.
That's right.
And they would go to where he was going and check out the location before he got there.
That's right.
So if he had a security team, the advanced team would have noticed this guy and they would have confronted him, or at least been aware of him, because he's lurking. He's doing something that you would question. What the hell are you doing around here? So yes, from what I understand now, and I've gotten calls from a lot of former police executives, and they called me and they told me that everyone is ringing their phone off the hook saying they want security right now because this is scaring people that are CEOs that are in high-level positions. And, everyone keeps talking about in the chat, why is this getting so much attention? I think we explained that before. He's the CEO of a high-profile company. The murder happened in Midtown, which is the New York City press is the biggest press corps in the entire world. So before you knew it, this became not just a national story, but an international story. This is also the NYPD, and people that also makes it a bigger case. Happened in the heart of New York City, and the man happens to be a wealthy CEO. That's why. Is that fair? No, it's not fair. But something? Life's not fair. But the reality is it's going to get this attention. I'm going to play this from CBS News.
Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. This morning, New York City police say they recovered what they believe is the shooter's backpack in Central Park. That's where the gunman fled after shooting Thompson in front of a hotel in Midtown Manhattan early Wednesday morning. While the backpack may serve as a valuable clue, the search is now expanding well beyond New York City and now includes the FBI and more than 80 police departments nationwide. Allie Bauman has been following the story and joins us now. Allie, good morning.
Good morning, Dana and Michelle. Investigators now believe the gunman left New York on a bus shortly after the shooting. NYPD sources say they have more than 200 images of the person they want to question, but they have not named a suspect or determined a motive. Meanwhile, the shooting and public reaction to it has left some healthcare and business executives rattled. New video obtained by CBS News appears to show the individual who police are calling a person of interest stopping to bend toward a pile of trash on West 55th Street. This video was taken just a few minutes after surveillance footage at a nearby Starbucks shows a hooded and masked man using cash to buy a drink in a power bar. Less than a half hour later, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was shot and killed just a few blocks away. Police say the gunman was then seen riding a bike into Central Park before he exits on the Upper West Side without a backpack, and he ditches the bike.
We have him in a taxi cab, and the taxi cab takes him up to 178th Street and Broadway, which, as we know, is a Port Authority bus center. Those buses are interstate buses. That's why we believe he may have left New York City.
Sources tell CBS News the gunman may have boarded a bus that was leaving for Atlanta. On Friday, investigators combed Central Park and found what they believe is the shooter's backpack, and they focused on the Manhattan hostel where they think he stayed and where a surveillance camera captured this image. It's the person they're looking for with his mask down.
There's lots of time left. This is by no means in any way cold, this trail. This is a hot trail.
Meanwhile, the shooting has reignited national anger with the healthcare industry. Investigators say the words deny, delay, and depose were etched into bullet casings found at the scene, words often used to criticize insurance companies' tactics in rejecting patients' claims.
We're fighting with the insurance company over her dialysis to keep her alive.
In the days after the shooting, social media lit up with Americans sharing their frustration with insurance providers. A survey taken last year found 12% of claims were denied, up 20% from 2020. While a 2023 survey found nearly 60% of insured adults experienced some issue with their coverage in the previous year. Now, in the wake of the shooting, some business leaders are looking to increase corporate security. United Healthcare, the company Thompson worked for, removed photos and biographical information of executives from its website. Another health insurance company in Minnesota did the same and temporarily closed its 6 office locations.
So that's an example of, as they used to say on the police department, hang on a second, folks, to close the barn door. Close the barn door after the horse ran out. You know, this
Right.
has happened. Now everyone wants security. And guess what? When one wants security now, they're not going to be able to get it because it's going to be inundated. This is one of the busiest times of the year, December, right? And now all these CEOs, they want security because they see there's threats out there, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, if you're working in the private security business and you're doing like armed chauffeur business or armed guard business, you know, uniformed or plain clothes, you're in clover at this point because you're going to have a good Christmas for your company. But you're right. It is like closing the barn door. I mean, it seems to me maybe because we're from law enforcement, we think of security all the time, and it's something that occurs naturally to us, but for a lot of other people, they don't realize how much security there is, both, you know, at the Port Authority bus terminal with cameras. Maybe there's not always people walking around in uniform, but there's always security. And and you need it. How many, you go into a department store, you go into an office building, you know, there's always somebody asking, you know, where you going, what's your ID, who you going to see, that sort of thing. You have an appointment, you know, so you need that sort of thing. And for a CEO like this, not to have anybody, even if it's not a security person with a firearm, at least somebody with them helping them walk through their day. If I'm the CEO and I've got meeting after meeting after meeting scheduled, and my day has already started at 6 a.m., you know, and I'm going to another meeting, I need help with that. I need help with somebody to remind me, do this, do that. How this person was just left on his own is really strange. It's like, I mean, you want to cut corners, you know, like I know you want to save money, your company, and that's what you want to do. You want to make profits, but it seems really negligent that there was no security. So if you are in a security company right now, 2025 is going to be a good year for you.
Absolutely. From the chat, Ton starts, I don't know how to read that last name. With the amount of support this has gotten, how sure are we that it's even his backpack and not planted by someone? Well, to answer that, because the NYPD is telling us it is. What reason would they have to say or falsely say this is the backpack? They have said it is the backpack. So there are things inside that backpack that they already know. We don't know. They haven't released what was inside. Was the gun inside that backpack? From an evidentiary standpoint, what is going to happen when we say forensically process that backpack? Obviously, they're going to try to lift fingerprints off it. They're going to try to get DNA off it. Now, if the gun is inside there, they're going to, of course, do ballistics tests. Is the suppression device, or i.e., the silencer that we as unprofessional ballistics experts would call it, or the public would call it a silencer, gun experts would call it a suppressor. So what did he have? It appears that in different video he had on a different colored jacket. Is there another jacket in there that matches some of the other video? The NYPD has, as they said on one of these reports, over 200 different photos of him taken off of video cameras. So they're stills. So the stills they produce aren't as good as a still that would be taken with just a standard camera, because it's being reproduced off of video. So I know everyone is like wants exacting pictures and exacting information, but they're not always going to get that. And could it be possible that one or two of the photos aren't the same guy? Absolutely. They're sending out hundreds of detectives pulling video. Now they have another assignment. They just found out he got here on the 24th. They found out that out yesterday morning. Now we want to find out, what did he do for those 10 days? Where was he? In fact, one night, I believe it was on the 29th, he checked into the hostel. He checked out of the hostel on the 29th and then checked back in on the 30th. Where did he go? Where did he stay that night? These are all questions we have, and all of these questions, if answered, will aid in us finding out and identifying who this guy is, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, this guy is part of a group, and this group has helped him. You know, he is their lightning bolt to get revenge on CEOs in healthcare. So this is a small group. Probably, I don't think it's going to be more than, like, say, half a dozen people in this group. And I think probably that they sent him from maybe perhaps Georgia up to New York to do this. And so he is a man on a mission. He's gotten away so far. But if you look at some of those pictures and you compare the lighting would make a gray hoodie look black, or a blue hoodie look lighter. You know, now some of these pictures you could tell that it may be a different jacket because of the pockets and things like that. So they're probably taken on 2 different days. I would imagine he would have, 2 pairs of pants, 2 jackets, 2 shirts, a couple of gaiters that you could put up over your face, that go around your neck, and you pull them quickly over your face. Yeah, that's quite normal. I don't think he would be here in New York with 1 pair of pants, 1 jacket, that, and 1 pair of socks. No, that's not going to happen. So he's going around and he's got different clothes on at different dates. That's normal. It doesn't mean that it's a different person. It could be a different person, but I don't think so. That person looks like a young man, I would say about 30. You can see he's got some stubble at one point. We know it's not a woman. Some people were saying it's transgender, it's a woman. No, it's not a woman. We know it's a guy. And so therefore, we have a lot more information that the police can get from these videos that the average person may not see. They may, and so therefore the police can have more information than the average person may believe that they have. So have faith that this guy's going to get caught.
You guys in the chat are not believing what we say. Some of you, all right? Yeah. Someone asked, why would he booby trap the backpack? The guy just killed somebody for a political reason. You don't think he would mind taking out a few cops with a bomb if he had that talent? So anyone who says that, would you go retrieve and open that bag without it being x-rayed by bomb squad? If you would, you'd be a damn fool, because for the reasons I just gave you, of course he wouldn't have minded killing a couple of cops. This was, from what I could see, a political murder. A political, he was somehow, was it personal? Yes, it was personal, except It could have been personal against United Healthcare, and not personal specifically against Brian Thompson. But Brian Thompson is the face of United Healthcare. So what better way to get back at United Healthcare and make a political statement? Do you not believe it was a political statement when we saw what was written on the side of the spent shells? Deny, defend, depose? That's part of a book about lawyers say all the time that this company denies healthcare, paying people their claims. So if you don't believe that he's trying to make a political statement, then go ahead, go retrieve that backpack without the bomb squad checking it out first. And if you did that, you'd be a damn fool. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, I do remember years ago, one time a cop was looking for a suspected explosive device, and he kicked a bag by accident. I don't know if he kicked it by accident or he just kicked it out of carelessness, and it blew up and he lost his leg. This is not something cops take, lightly. You're hunting down a man who's just killed somebody successfully in the early morning hours in Midtown Manhattan with all the security. You find his backpack. He's on the run. All right. He's on the run somewhere. You don't think he might, if he's got a little bit of experience, put something, maybe a time device or something like that in that backpack, hoping to just kill one other person? Because just think about it. You kill a cop right there. Suddenly, you not only do you hurt the cop or whomever may have found that backpack. It could be a kid. It could be a homeless person rummaging around the behind trees in Central Park. Not only do you have that, now you have a death, and you blow up and destroy a lot of evidence also that may have been retrieved. So that's not it's not far-fetched at all. That is really good police work to handle that as if it was the worst case scenario. If you've been involved in these sorts of manhunts, that's something that police do. You have to be careful because people do leave booby traps, and they don't care who they kill, especially if they're killing and they're on the run now. It could be an innocent mom or dad or teenager or kid or homeless person. They don't care. They don't care who they kill.
100%. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, just hit that red subscribe button right on the screen. Give us a thumbs up. Hit that like button. Share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with, count them, 5 different levels. And you can become part of the Police Off the Cuff supporters, Police Off the Cuff family, and become part of our channel. And we'd appreciate any of you new guys. I see a lot of new names in the chat, and we'd love to have you come aboard. A big thing about this case also was the firearm that was used, an unusual firearm, a firearm that had what was called a suppression, not a silencer. They call it a suppressioner, and that silences or makes the gun quieter. And I believe that this shooter wanted that because he didn't want to draw much attention. But it also had its risks. And we're going to put on here from Banfield the other night a firearms expert that talks about this gun.
Number one is that jamming and why a gun might have jammed 3 times and needed to be hit like that. And number two, I thought it was a silencer, and you've disabused me of that. What is the difference of a silencer and a suppressor? And would that have meant none of us could hear all this?
A silencer is just the civilian word for suppressor. It's what they call it in the movies, but technically it's a suppressor because it changes the sound. It doesn't make it silent.
So what about the jamming? And we'll run some of the video again.
So we don't really know.
That shows him hitting.
I'm not sure that the gun is actually jamming so much as failure to feed. So they're different. And what Scott was showing was called a stovetop jam. But essentially, in order for
he meant to say stovepipe. He said that incorrectly, and because of that, people were destroying this poor guy in their chat. But he is a really legitimate firearms expert. I've seen him be used as a talking head before during the Alec Baldwin case.
Ammo to get from here to here, which is where it fires. So normally the bullet is sitting, right here. When the gun goes off, as the bullet goes out the front, the casing exerts force against the back, and that cycles the gun. So in a proper cycling, that goes all the way back and then comes forward. And then when it comes back again, it ejects around and then it comes forward. But if you're using subsonic ammo, which is ammo that has a velocity of less than 1,100 feet per second, because you want it to be very quiet, it sometimes is underpowered. And so the slide will come back a little bit, but not far enough to eject that casing and not far enough to load the next round. It'll go back partly. And because now you just have a spent casing in there, you would manually have to throw that spent casing out in order to get the next one in. So he could be having that short cycling because of a lack of powder and subsonic ammo, or if you saw in his stance, which was a reverse Weaver stance, where he had his shooting foot forward. Typically, you would have your shooting foot back. He's got his feet. Yeah, there you go. So he's got a proper footwork there, but you look, his left leg is up on its side. So I'm right on there with Scott. You would have optimal positioning if you were a professional, not alternating your feet forward and backwards between your shots. And you would have tested this gun to make sure that it cycles properly with the ammo. It seems like he anticipated that the gun might not cycle, so he may have practiced with that subsonic ammo. And I also agree with Scott on the distance issue. That's a lot of distance unnecessarily placed between himself and the subject.
Okay, I got two more questions. Yeah. I have two more questions and not enough time. So first one goes to you, Steve, and that is that when he's popping out the ejected casings, they're still scattered on the sidewalk and 3 live rounds. Can you explain that and how that could be really beneficial to the investigators?
Well, the gun can leave marks on the casings, and then those can help track that to the gun. It leaves marks on the casings, and the firing pin also leaves a mark on the primer, which is also unique to each gun. So those things could be used to help trace the gun if they locate it. The other thing that can inhibit the cycling of the gun is that if you don't hold the gun firmly, and so typically you would want this arm straight so that you're able to keep the gun frame in place so that the slide can go all the way back. But you'll see in that video, he's got his shooting arm cocked and his support arm straight, which is also backwards. And that will also lead to a short cycling of the gun.
Not a super pro. Okay, just a couple seconds left. But Scott, the way he exited, he walked quietly. He was never nervous. He wasn't jumpy. He did his shooting. He walked right up to the victim, shot again, sauntered off quietly into the streets of Manhattan. What does that tell you, and what does that do for cops who are investigating?
That looks to me like it's an adrenaline dump he's had, because he's building up this. He's been waiting for it. He's been in the coffee shop. He's been standing around. No telling how long he's been waiting. So he does the shooting, and when he's finished, all that anger and everything that he's got locked inside is sort of released. And that adrenaline, after that big dump of adrenaline, then he starts to relax, but he's just angry as he leaves. That's why we see that waddle as he's going away. Because you'll notice he walks almost normally at the top. He doesn't walk at the gait of a military person or a police officer. But then he gets that waddle as he's paying attention to the gun because he's trying to keep his balance. He's not used to doing things like this. He's not a proficient gun handler. So I think that's an adrenaline dump. And after that, you're sort of worn out. And with all the anger and all that, I think that's what we're seeing him experience there. That's why the slow walk.
Thanks for watching.
So I thought quite a good presentation. Now you understand, but there was 3 spent shells on the sidewalk, which indicates he fired 3 rounds. There was also 3 live rounds, which are indicative that he cocked the slide back, because you saw his report, how this gun wouldn't cycle. It wouldn't recock itself. So the 3 rounds were from him working the slide, not because the gun jammed, because of what the firearms expert just explained to us just a few minutes ago. So they also claim this gun is used on farms and stuff to kill animals, as to not scare them with the loud noise. So I've never come across a gun like this in my entire police career, and I don't know of anyone that has. Mike, have you?
No, I've not. We've seen all kinds of guns from small to huge, and this is the first time I'm hearing that from today. Doing in some investigation, that it was a gun that you'd see on a farm if you wanted to, put down a sick animal. You wouldn't scare any of the other animals or cause them to stampede or whatever. It's the first time I'm hearing of that. I'm not familiar with that kind of firearm whatsoever.
I'm reading a lot of this in the chat, and I just want to clear it up. K-Pick, can a mod block the people saying he's been identified? That's not confirmed at all, and only one place is saying that, and that place is known for false news. K-Pick, you're 100% right. He has not been identified. We have some inside police sources have told us that. I think Mayor Adams misspoke or made it sound like they had a name to this investigation, and that's not correct. They do not have a name to this shooter. He has not been identified, but they are following up leads. There's a lot of evidence to this. They do have his DNA, and we spoke about that. They also do have a fingerprint, because the fingerprint or fingerprints have been run through AFIS. That's the automated fingerprint identification system. And apparently that was met with negative results, no hit. All right. They also need to run those fingerprints through non-criminal fingerprint databases. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're a stockbroker, if you get fingerprinted to work with children, you're a school teacher, they take your fingerprints. Those are non-criminal fingerprints. But does that mean someone that's in those non-criminal fingerprint databases couldn't have committed a crime? No, it doesn't. So we need to run his fingerprints through those non-criminal fingerprint databases to check those. Now, when I say lots of evidence, there's still a ton of work to do. They just found out yesterday morning that he got here on the 24th. They didn't know that. So now they're busy trying to find him on those days leading up to the shooting. Where was he? He must not have stayed in his room at the hostel for all those days. So now detectives have to do the footwork and find out, where did he go? Where was he during all these days? Was he reconning all those hours? This man apparently is not from New York City. It seemed like he knew or had a good plan to set up his arrival and his escape route from that location. And you notice what he did after the shooting. He got the hell out of town real quick, didn't he? He ditched the bike. Whether they recovered the bike or not, that has not yet been reported. But the big treasure trove of information from yesterday, of course, was this right here, the backpack that was recovered. Based on a lot of footwork, a lot of manpower, 100 police officers went into the park to recover this. And now we're waiting to hear the results. It'll take probably several days. But as I said earlier on, I believe the police department is releasing too much information, and they should really hold it much closer to the vest. New York City has always been known to do that, to be so transparent with the press. And as we used to say, the press can be your best friend or your biggest enemy. So you got to use the press. You got to play them like a Stradivarius violin. You can't give them everything they ask for, because in the end, it can hurt your case. Mike.
Yeah, Phil brought this up the other day. You normally people always think you're going to start your investigation from where the shooting began and going forward, trying to track the person down. But knowing that this person was in New York City for over a week earlier, you're also going to have detectives that are going to go backwards from the minute of the shooting, backwards, previous days, previous week, to find out how he got into New York, who he was with, did he meet anybody? Is there any video of him anywhere meeting a third party, someone who may have, given him information, walked him around the area? Was he in the company of anybody else at all looking like they were helping him as an accomplice, a co-conspirator. So there's just as much, investigation going backwards regressively as it is going prospectively forward. So that's another part, because that may, if they find some information about someone else, and that someone else can be identified as being someone who had had some sort of connection with him, that could be a huge break in the case too. So there's a lot more that that detectives are doing than just going forward. They're also going backwards. And that is absolutely necessary, because if you just get one bit of information from who that other person is, you get them, you'll get this guy too. So there's a lot of work that is drudge work, as you said, going through, hours and hours and hours, countless hours of video, trying to find where he was, day one when he got to New York, day two, day three. You got 8 days, I think, almost, before, from the time he got here to the time of the shooting. That's a lot of work, but somebody's got to do it. So this task force that has been put together, is a huge undertaking, and only a place like the NYPD could handle this kind of investigation.
Absolutely. A. Lee Hilliard from the chat. This isn't Manhattan South. This is Manhattan North. It is a block and a half away. No, it's not. It is Manhattan South. Anything below 59th Street is Manhattan South. What you're confusing this with, this precinct that covers 54th Street is called Midtown North Precinct, as compared to Midtown South, that is on 35th Street, I believe it is. And this Midtown North Precinct is on 54th Street, actually, on the further westbound, between 8th and 9th. 7th and 8th. So this absolutely is the borough of Midtown South. I just want to clear that up. But it is Midtown North Precinct, so that may be a point of confusion for you. K-Pick, Helen, they're known for false news, and also they're the only ones saying that. There's reason, because it's not true. Look, let's close the door on that. The perpetrator has not been identified. There's no information on that. Who's ever putting that out there is a troll. It's not true. The mayor may have misspoke. He may have said something that led people to believe that they had him identified. They do not have the perpetrator identified. There is no name to the perpetrator right now. Could we wind up getting a name today at some point? Absolutely. Marnie Norris Photography, thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. He's been identified according to the New York City mayor on Reuters. No, the mayor, I watched the mayor. He didn't say he was identified. He misspoke. He said that they'll have him soon or something, but people interpreted that as that he had him identified. He never said that we have a name to this perpetrator, nor did the chief of detectives, and nor did the police commissioner. They never said that. We were right on this, right on the air, and we would get information from our sources if, in fact, he was identified. Let's see, from the chat, I'm trying to read some of you people in the chat. Robin Brazel, someone might need to pay for their health care. Well, we don't doubt that this is about that. Someone holds a grudge against this company for whatever the reason is. The Truth from the chat. Hey, I saw this guy on the left on the Banfield show. It's Billy the Hammer Cannon. He hits the nail right on the head. Well, thank you. I never heard it put that way, but it's quite funny. But thank you. Donald Grant from the chat. He still think they need to investigate the company books for money laundering. I think that's the federal government had a case, or has a case, United Healthcare. And if you've been following this or read some of the stuff, is that the top people in the company knew that the investigation was coming. And before it was announced, they sold their stock. And then when the government announced the investigation, the stock plummeted. So you're quite correct. And that there needs to be an investigation about that. But people in those top positions, it's almost like politicians. They get away with insider trading, even though it's illegal for the rest of us, Brian Smith. Brian traveled extensively for work. I suspect he didn't have a security detail to maintain his privacy. Assassin is a scorned lover, just my hunch. Well, Brian, you know something? You could be right. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong. Many people have conjectured on this case, and you're right. It could be a million things. I'm going to play this from Fox News.
News alert, the FBI stepping in to help with a nationwide manhunt for the suspected killer who gunned down the CEO of United Healthcare. Police now examining new evidence, including what they believe is the killer's backpack, as seen in this photo obtained by the New York Post. This all while hinting at what the killer's motive might be.
I'm not going to commit to a motive right now, but obviously, when you look at the writing, you look at the victim's employment, it could possibly be a disgruntled employee or a disgruntled client. But we're not ruling that out, but we're certainly not committing to it at this time.
Former NYPD lieutenant and U.S. Army veteran Dr. Darren Porcher joins us now. Darren, great to see you this morning. So you're seeing this evidence sort of trickle out for the public, the backpack, the suspected exit route to the bus station, perhaps to Atlanta. Do you think authorities right now know much more, perhaps are zeroing in on a guy that we're still wondering about? Do you think they're much closer to catching this guy than perhaps we might know?
Well, good morning, Will, and good morning to the viewers. And I believe that police have far more information that they're revealing to the public. I think that when we look at this backpack, for example, based on the puffiness, it's clear that it's populated with items. And what's going to happen is the NYPD is going to transport that backpack to their crime scene lab in Jamaica, Queens, to conduct a forensic investigation on the items that are contained in that bag, because those items can be germane in establishing an ID for who the individual in question would be. I think that we have more than enough at this point in time, because the killer has blinked on several occasions. And so I just think it's a matter of days or even hours before we have a capture of this violent individual that killed the CEO of United Healthcare on the streets of New York.
Before we move on, you said you think there are several instances of the killer, quote unquote, blinking. By blinking, I assume you mean making some mistakes in this entire process that would help law enforcement. Besides the backpack, what do you point to as other examples of the killer blinking?
When we look at the killer at the hostel, he revealed his face when he pulled his mask down. And how that's important is you're able to triangulate the eyes, the nose, and the mouth for facial recognition. And that's going to be significant in trying to establish who this individual is, and also presenting this information to the public, because now we have a chance of a friend or someone else that would have saw this video, or I should say still photo, and say, wow, I know that it's this person. Therefore, they'll call police to assist in trying to apprehend this individual.
All right, I want to move to another legal case here in New York City, this one already in the jury deliberation process.
All right, we're going to get off of that. So well-spoken, the Lieutenant, Dr. Darren Porcher, a frequent talking head on the news. But yeah, the recovery yesterday, of course, of the backpack was really the biggest news of the day yesterday, and so important. And with that, and again, everyone wants immediate gratification in this case. Everyone wants an arrest the day it happened. It's not happening. It's not that easy of a case. It's complicated. Many moving parts. Could there be others involved in this? Could this be? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that this perpetrator, who is yet to be identified, could have had help. Could have someone plant the bike in that alleyway that he used to escape. Could have met him, could have gotten rid of or dumped the backpack. They could have got rid of the bike. No one has found that bike, that e-bike, not a city bike. So far as we know, no one has recovered that yet. Could he have, passed it off to someone? And could that person gotten rid of it? Big piece of evidence, right? And then he gets in a cab, goes uptown 178th Street, and goes into the Port Authority bus terminal. So much more work to do on this case. So do we want an arrest? Yeah, I think we all do. Well, I can't say we all do, because this has caused a lot of vitriol among many people that hate health insurance companies, and as a result, hate Mr. Brian Thompson, who is the CEO of this company. So that means you also hate his family, his 2 young boys that are in high school, and his wife. And, life has to be worth a lot more than that. And unfortunately, I think that many people aren't thinking of his wife or his kids. They're just thinking of who he is and who he represents. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, there is so much to do in this investigation because not only are you looking for the actual killer, you're looking for any co-conspirators and also any organization, small little guerrilla organization that he belongs to. And you also got to look at what is the motive. We think we kind of know something about a motive. We're not sure. Is this motive, what looks to be a motive, a cover up for something more sinister, more complicated, maybe more insider? Because, and I always think about, how did he know to be at a particular time, in a particular place, in a particular location, and shoot the CEO? So, there's a lot more questions. We won't get our answers, right away. It's going to take a while. But this is going to be one of those things where there's so many layers to it: the shooter, the organization, the reason, any insider information. Is there anything else? Does the CEO have any sort of enemies within the organization? We don't know. It may be a very simple case, or it may be a very complicated case. Until we get the shooter right now, we don't know the whole story. Hopefully we'll get it soon.
Absolutely. From the chat, I'm here for the show. Probably been following him the whole time. Creepy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Narayoshi Miyagi. He had major intel inside job, hired gun. Narayoshi, I agree with you. I think he had help with this. I don't see one person doing all of this. There's so much we don't know yet. I think there's so much that the NYPD knows that they haven't shared. But I think there's also a great deal of information that the NYPD does not know. Sean Pellegrino from the chat. I almost think he could have not known where Brian was staying. And then while stalking him earlier that week, noticed he was going to the hotel across the street. Sean, great point. I think you could be 100% correct. David Polk from the chat. The average person now sees that media and government employees are not their friend. They are their enemies. I've sort of heard that before somewhere. Cheryl G from the chat. How did he know he was going to be there at the time? Well, it's very possible some of this was posted on websites, on the United Healthcare's website. Could have got the information from there, or else he has a mole inside the company that fed him information. It's very possible. Jane Creek from the chat. At North Star, he was being sued by a firefighter pension fund for insider trading. I wonder how they fit into all of this. There's so many different angles to this that we can't possibly cover all of them. But yes, any of them are possible. Kung Fu Panda, could it have been for insurance purposes, meaning no payout for suicide? I don't see that, Kung Fu Panda, but look, anything is possible, but I don't see that. Bob Cosmic from the chat, recon is the word. Yeah, he did an extensive recon. But we voiced our opinions early on, and several other very knowledgeable law enforcement people had said they don't believe he's a professional. I mean, meaning a professional hit guy, if there is such a thing, But he made lots and lots of mistakes, right? But he had a certain level of proficiency with firearms. And he also obviously is intelligent. He planned this extremely well. Almost every detail of it, except he made some stupid mistakes vis-a-vis going into the Starbucks and buying items in there and getting caught on video. And that is what spotted him on the street, and that led to many, many more photos that have recovered and are being used in this investigation. Kevin Curtis, no DNA in database, foreign agent possible, foreign citizen possible. Kevin, it only means that perhaps he's never been arrested. Because the DNA in CODIS is for those convicted of felonies and certain misdemeanors. And the other category of DNA in CODIS is forensic DNA. That's DNA that has been collected from crime scenes that is yet to be identified. So it doesn't mean that he's a foreigner. It means what I just suggested. But it could mean he's a foreigner. But it just means he's never been arrested in this country. Let's see. Well, Mike, you know something? I think that the biggest thing that we reported today, and the thing that everyone wants to hear about, is this backpack. This was the information. This was some of the news that everyone wanted to hear yesterday. It's a big happening. It's a big piece of evidence. And we're going to follow this as the investigation progresses. And if I tell you the truth, if I was the chief of detectives or the police commissioner, I wouldn't tell anyone what was inside this bag. But that's just me. They're going to tell the press everything. And I wouldn't tell them because they don't need to know, and it could potentially hurt your investigation. Mike, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Bill, as you're saying that, I'm thinking they're going to tell what was in that backpack probably by tomorrow or Monday, the latest. I mean, that's just the way it goes in New York City right now. But you're right. Unless there was something that you wanted to release to the public, for them to know so they could help hunt down this guy, you wouldn't want to release anything. But I bet within 24, 48 hours, we know what was in that backpack because there are so many people want information, so many people in the press, so many people in newspapers, radio stations, content creators. They have connections in the NYPD. They want to call up their friends, find out, what do you know? It'll be third-hand information, fourth-hand, hearsay information, totally unreliable, but they want something to put out there. But you're right. You've got to be really careful what you release to the public and when you release it. The pictures are the biggest thing. But everybody should have patience. This is not going to go on forever. This is not a DB Cooper kind of case where we're not going to know 50 years from now who did this. We're going to know soon enough. So patience, patience, patience.
Kim Robinson from the chat, thank you for this comment. United Healthcare had the date, place, and time on the website on November 26th. The shooter arrived in New York City November 24th. He had inside information on, it should be Brian Thompson's itinerary. Kim Robinson, thank you for that information.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that on the website, but look, we are all an open book in this society. Every single one of us, if you're on social media, anyone could find you. Anyone could find where you live. Anyone could find lots of stuff about you. So if you want to live in all the modern conveniences of this world, then you're going to put your security at risk. If you don't want to order stuff from Amazon, if you don't want to order stuff online, if you don't want to order food and have it delivered, if you don't want to have a cell phone, if you don't want to be part of this modern world, then, maybe no one will find you. But if you are, and you're using all the modern conveniences, you make yourself findable and put yourself a little bit at risk. Anyway, folks, I want everyone to know that we're going to stay with this case as it progresses, as new information. And look, we're not going to feed you bullshit. I've seen people putting stuff out that I'm like, where did they get that from? We're going to feed you stuff that we know, things that we understand based on our law enforcement background. But I see a lot of brand new people in the chat. Again, if you could hit that subscribe button, join the Police Off the Cuff family. Know that you will get true crime from a police perspective. And we appreciate every single one of you. And if you like the show, give us the thumbs up, hit that like button, and share us with your friends and your family. Folks, have a great day. I'm Bill Cannon. On behalf of myself and Professor Mike Geary, we are Police Off the Cuff. Have a great day, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.